Chavre, how are you? I hope everyone is gesund, stark, und freilich, begashmis und beruchnis. I hope everyone is healthy, strong, and happy, physically and spiritually. Today is Erev Shabbos Kodesh Pashas Para, Erev Shabbos Kodesh Pashas Vayakhel. So before we start, as usual, since the war started, we get Tzedakah, Gdel Tzedakah Shemakareves Hagula, Mashiach now. Then we say a prayer. This prayer is going to be connected to what we're going to speak about today, something that some of you may not know. May the pleasantness of Hashem be upon us. Establish for us the work of our hands. Establish the work of our hands. This is connected to this week's parsha because this is the prayer that Moshe Aaron said before Hakamas HaMishkan. So this week's parsha speaks about the actual Hakamas HaMishkan. Now, in this week's parsha, Parshas Vayakhel, everyone knows the beginning of the parsha talks about how Vayakhel Moshe gathered the nation and he spoke to them about the Mishkan, the building of the Mishkan, but he also mentions the idea of guarding the Shabbos, and Shabbos overrides any melacha that is done for the Mishkan. But there's one thing which is highly unusual, which Rashi speaks about straight away, and that is that as Moshe Rabbeinu was telling the Yidden that they should keep Shabbos, and it supersedes the building of the Mikdash, Moshe Rabbeinu says, "L'sevayru eish b'chol moshveiseichem b'yom HaShabbos." You should not light fire on Shabbos. So all the commentaries from the Gemara, I'm saying, and Mechilta, as we'll soon quote, address this question, which is a very obvious question. Why does the Torah single out L'sevayru eish b'chol moshveiseichem b'yom HaShabbos, which is only one of the 39 melachas? Rashi straight away brings out the most famous vart from the Gemara, see there. But one of the answers is that we learn out, because the Torah singles out L'sevayru eish b'chol moshveiseichem b'yom HaShabbos, we learn out something completely interesting and, so to speak, in a way different. And that is, as the Rambam in Mitzvahs Loisasei Shin Chav Beis writes, the negative commandment of not giving a punishment from Beis Din on Shabbos. It's a question whether it goes only on the Misa or also Malchus, but anyways, I'll read you the words of the Rambam. We were warned not to punish the sinners. We learned this out from L'sevayru eish. Hakavana bekach. What do we learn out from not kindling a fire? Leitisreif mishin is chayiv sreifa. People were chayiv sreifa, and it's connected to fire. V'adin l'shon mises. But from this we also learn out concerning the other mises Bezdin, that Bezdin was not allowed to give the punishment on Shabbos. The Lashna Mechilta, and the Mechilta says, Lo yisevayru eish sreifa b'chlal hoysa v'yotzas l'lamed ma sreifa miyuchedes she'achas memises Bezdin v'eni deiches HaShabbos af kol shar mises lo yitches HaShabbos. So too, we learn out from this, as the pasuk says, Lo yisevayru eish, and it means also, and we're learning it from a biblical, this pasuk, that just as we learn from this, that we're now going to give out sreifa, give that punishment to sinners, we're now going to do the other punishments either, the arba mises Bezdin. So that's the Rambam. Now, it's interesting in general, this is what made this so interesting to me, is that, when we talk about Shabbos is definitely something which is the centerpiece, the center point, at the very essence of Judaism. and the life of a Yid, and a Yiddishkeit. It's in the Aseres Hadibres. So you'd think there are many, many mitzvahs, deiraisa, connected to Shabbos. For example, Pesach, I forgot right now how many deiraisas are connected to Pesach. If it's 6, 7, 8. And in Shabbos, and generally, there's only like 3. There's the Malachas, which are considered 1, but you're not allowed to do any of the 39. There's Tchum Shabbos, no, there's 4. There's Tchum Shabbos, you're not allowed to walk out of the boundaries of Shabbos. There's Kiddush and Havdalah, that means to remember the Shabbos. And then, this is a mitzvah loisase minat Torah. You're not allowed to give out punishment for Shabbos. So, I'm saying in general, you'd think that Shabbos would have many, many more mitzvahs. It's so important, it's so essential to the idea of a Jew. And yet, it only has like 4 mitzvahs. And one of them is about the Bezdin should not punish on Shabbos. That seems to be a detail. And why is it like so essential to the Raisa? We learn it out from Lisavayru Eish. So, what's the idea behind it? In general, of course, when we speak about Shabbos and we say it's a day of rest, now, obviously in the Goyish sense, when they say a day of rest, it's a day of rest. You shouldn't be inundated with emails and with WhatsApp and with social media. And it's a day of rest means a me day, in a certain sense. So you could only focus on yourself and that's it. And it's a lazy day. Every day of the week I have to rush and get up early in the morning. And when it comes to my day of rest, it's a day off, so to speak, off. But in Yiddishkeit, nothing further can be from the truth. So, this idea, just what's interesting about how far does this go that we say that we don't punish on Shabbos? What does that mean? What's the idea behind it? Now we give a look at the Baal HaTurim. As usual, the Baal HaTurim always has fascinating ideas. So the Baal HaTurim says straight away 2 things that right away puts it into perspective and gives you the idea of what you should be focusing on. What does the Baal HaTurim say on Loisavayru Eish? Do not make a fire. Amar HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Hashem said, Ur Shali, Perush Shel Gehenim. My fire, the fires of Gehenim, the fires of hell. Shabbos, Bishvilchem, rests for you. The fires of Gehenim stop on Shabbos. Gam Ur Shalachem Yeshavos. So to your fire from man, when your man, the person himself, and also from Bezdin, should be rested on Shabbos. So right away the Baal HaTurim is telling you, we're dealing with something going on throughout all the worlds, in the spiritual realms, in the spiritual galaxies. There's this inyan of rest. The fires of Gehenim are resting, and therefore your fires have to rest. So we're dealing with spirituality straight away, a different realm. The next Baal HaTurim, where it says, the pasuk ends HaShabbos, L'Sivayra Eish B'chol Mishvaseicha B'yem HaShabbos, and the next pasuk starts Vayomer. The Baal HaTurim on HaShabbos Vayomer, Rosh HaTevos V'Sof HaTevos Torah. The word HaShabbos Vayomer has a Hey, Tov, Vav, Reish, which equals Torah. L'Ramei She'ikar HaTorah B'Shabbos, Kisha'odam Ponim Asakov. Your main learning of Torah should be happening on Shabbos when a person is free from his regular work. So here we see straight away what this idea, this pasuk, Torah says L'Sivayru Eish, and all of a sudden it's not only talking about your single fire, not only is it talking about a fire connected to Bezdin, but now it means the concept of punishment. And now we're saying it also includes the fires of Gehenna. But wait, there's more. There's 2 halachas, which I don't think most of you are aware of, in the Alter Rebbe Shulchan Aruch and in Shulchan Aruch in general, that speak about this, and I want to show how it makes a difference in our, so to speak, actual day-to-day living as a Jew. Shulchan Aruch, Eire Chaim, Hilchas Shabbos. So in Siman Reish Tzadik Aleph, Siv Kotten Beis, it says concerning the meal on Shalosh Shudas. And it says that you should eat Shalosh Shudas before Mincha, because between Mincha and Ma'ariv, Bein HaShmoshes, Osa Lishtes Mayim, B'toich HaSuda Achrei, you shouldn't be drinking water. Bein HaShmoshes, that's the time which is the twilight period, between day and night. You have to be careful not to eat then, to drink water. Mipnei shukorev lizman chazores haneshamos legehenim, because this is the time where the neshamas are going back to Gehenim. They had it off during Shabbos, and this is the time where the neshamas are going to go back to Gehenim, the Mitzvah Shabbos. Vashoisa oz mayim mehanor, and if you drink water then from the river, hariz a goizel as a mason. You're stealing from the water that the Mesim are drinking, the ones that are in Gehenim. Shemiskarim b'mayim koidim chazarosam. They're getting a last refreshment, filling up the tank of the cool water before they return to Gehenim. V'yesh chsash sakana b'dova. But wait, there's more. And he says, don't worry, but we have no problem with that, my friends, because we're not drinking water from the river. The Alter Rebbe right away says, if the water's prepared from before, it's no problem, or you can drink something else. But wait, there's more. Then he says, it's not only about Shalosh Sudis, it's about Erev Shabbos. When they first get out of the Gehenim, they're also splashing their faces with this water. So when you're drinking then, you're also stealing from their water. How astonishing is that we have halachas in Shulchan Aruch that discusses how we should conduct ourselves, because we're diminishing from the waters, from the people, all connected to the idea that in Gehenim, Shabbos, it's off. Now there's another halacha in the Alter Rebbe Shulchan Aruch. That was Siman Reish Tzadik Aleph. This is Siman Reish Tzadik Hey. And this is connected to what I said in the beginning, Vihi Noyim. The Alter Rebbe talks about the prayers that we make Motzei Shabbos, and we have the Vihi Noyim, the Yeshiva Seisen, of Volotzian, and he says the following. Unbelievable. The reason why we add these prayers to Motzei Shabbos after Ma'ariv, it's not a regular Ma'ariv service. We add to the Motzei Shabbos Ma'ariv, who kedei sheishtau Yisro b'shloma sidreim kedei laharich l'rishoyim melachzor l'gehenim. They should have more time to have a break from the Gehenim, which means, so to speak, we're able to, through our Ma'ariv, keep the Gehenim closed a bit longer. The Gehenim and everything waits till the Yidden finish their Ma'ariv, their closure of Shabbos. So therefore, the Anshe Knesset Agdelu, we added prayers to give a bigger break for the Yidden. So this idea of the fires not burning on Shabbos extends a bit longer after Shabbos. So what's the meaning behind it? So on one level, you could say that the Chiddush over here is on one level of Avos Yisrael. That even someone who's a sinner, even someone who's a criminal, even the people that are in maximum security, we have Avos Yisrael. We look out after every Jew, no matter who he is. Like the Rebbe mentioned many times a quote that says, when it comes to giving the Chayvei Mises, we made it in such a way that it should be easier for the person. And the lashon of the Gemara is B'rer loi misa yafa. We choose a misa which is more pleasant for the person, easier for the person. And the Rebbe would always mention these words, B'rer loi misa yafa, to show to what extent is Avos Yisrael, that even a Yid who's in the lowest level possible, that he deserves Chayav Misa, which is pretty serious stuff. Like it's the most stringent Averis, usually it's Chayav Misa. Nevertheless, even about such a Jew, we say, B'rer loi misa yafa. We still act humane, with mercy, and it shows how much we really love it, etc. So too over here, we could say on a certain level that the idea of the fact that we say that there's no punishment on Shabbos is to show the degree of how much we care about every single person, that when it comes Shabbos, we extend the idea of Shabbos to every single person. But obviously that's just one point. But the real point is that it's not about the Gavra, the idea of Avos Yisrael, but it's about the idea of Shabbos. Shabbos is so much next level that it permeates our world, it permeates all the worlds. It starts in Hashem himself, as the Baal HaTurim says, that Hashem says, I turned off my fires of Gehenna on Shabbos, so you too the same. And what's the idea? That there shouldn't be punishment on Shabbos. So really it's connected to the central theme of Shabbos. Now, if we look in the Sefer HaChinuch, we see really what the idea is. Because, like I said, in general, on the lowest level, you could say, why don't we have a fire on Shabbos? Because just like we don't do any other melachas. So the idea is, it's a day of rest. Shvisa mimelacha. Fire is one of the major things. Energy, cooking, whatever it is. So therefore, fire represents man's acts, and therefore you can't do it on Shabbos, because we don't do any choil. We don't do any mundane things. It's connected to work. Next level, you could say, even the Avodas HaMishkan, which this week's Pasha teaches us, that we're not allowed to do the melachas. Shabbos supersedes it. You could argue and say, because Shabbos itself, we're connected to Hashem. It's already a mitzvah, so to speak. And doing malacha for the Beis HaMikdash, to build a Mikdash, is really, in a certain sense, it's a hachana to a mitzvah. We're coming to an end. We're building a mishkan so the Eibush should reside. But Shabbos is already a mitzvah, so to speak. And this brings us to the idea of a Bezdin not carrying out a punishment of Shabbos. Over here also, we have to look at it and think to ourselves, but we're not doing something mundane. We're carrying out justice. We're doing something for Hashem. That itself, whatever mitzvahs are connected to a Bezdin, doing what they're meant to be doing, so it's a mitzvah. What's the difference between this mitzvah or that mitzvah? So over here, we come to the chinuch. And the chinuch says a line, and I believe Bechal, the chinuch is mamish neflois m'teresecha. The chinuch writes as follows: Mitzvah Kuf Yudalid, Shalei Yasu Bezdin Mishpat Mavez B'Shabbos, and he writes Mishoshe a mitzvah Sherotza Hashem the Eibush wanted L'chabed Hayim Hazeh Sheyimtzu Bei Menucha HaKoil. Hashem wanted a day that there should be rest for everyone. Gam HaChoytim VaChayovim. But then he writes like this: you could still think it's about that everyone has to have a rest. Mashal Melech Godol, a great king, Shekara B'nei HaMedina Yom Echad L'Suda, he called everyone to a meal. She'eine Minei HaPesach Mikol Adam, it's open house. He made a feast for the entire country. Today is a day of celebration. And he called everyone to this Suda. It's a kiruv. But when that day of celebration, the meal is over, then we can start with the judgments. Kein Dover Hazeh Hashem Baruch Hu tzivonu lekadosh l'chabed yom Shabbos l'toivoseinu u'lezakoseinu. V'zeh gam ken michvede shel yom hu. So this Sefer HaChinuch to me represents what the true idea of Shabbos is according to Chassidus. Chassidus explains that there are like two levels of Hashem as usual. You have Hashem in relation to himself, and you have Hashem in relation to the world. We can call it Seva Kalalman, Memala Kalalman, Shem Havaya, Shem Elikim. There's Shabbos, and there's the rest of the week. Shabbos is Aliyas HaElemis. The rest of the week is called Avodas HaBerurim. So, I gave this analogy many times before. Imagine you have a general of the king, and he's fighting a battle. On the battlefield, he roars, he is raging, and he's full of animation and spashtus. He's in a state of expansion. And that's as it should be. Because Dafka, the more he's bespashtus, the more he's successful. He's all over the place, defeating the enemy in this corner, that place. He's an unbelievable fighter. But then there's when he's standing in front of the king, and over here comes the famous Lashon, which is brought on Chassidus. Would you dare gesture in the presence of the king? When you're standing in front of the king, mamish, with the permission of the king, can I twitch? With the permission of the king, can I flinch? Or whatever the word is. So it's two different levels. There's a Yid when he's doing Avodas Hashem. There's Uvn Dechel for sure, that the Avodah B'chol Derech Echdei B'chol Masech L'Shem Shemayim. But then there's the Avodah of a Yid when he's standing in front of the king. Or let's even say it better. We have the king as the king is standing in his balcony addressing the nation. That's the king as he's lowering himself to speak to the people. Then there's the king in his bedroom. There's the king Aviyani HaMelech HaDorov. He's inviting you to his private life. Like the Chinuch writes, that the king is inviting you to a Suda. And that's a Kiruv, as the Chinuch writes. What's Shabbos? Shabbos is the level we get to bask in the glory of the king himself. It's not about outhouse, it's about in-house. It's about connecting to our sources, connecting to our roots, connecting to the higher level of Hashem. Shabbos is about dveikus LaHashem, a deeper level of cleaving and attachment and oneness and closeness to Hashem. And therefore, it gives us a whole new understanding of what Shabbos is. To put it in different words, when we speak about Avodas HaBerurim, there's still two forces. There's one force, that's the good force, working on the other outside the world to try to elevate it. That's called Avodas HaBerurim. But what else do we say? That it's all elevated. We're existing in the source. There's no more friction between the physical and the spiritual, and the spiritual and the physical. There's no more friction, there's no more tension. It's like it says that the whole union of the Torah mitzvahs was Lasha Shalom Ba'elam, that the spirituality should completely transform the physical. It's like the physical becomes spiritual. And that's what's going to happen when Mashiach comes. And that's why when it comes to Shabbos, we say, because really the idea of Shabbos and Menucha is the idea that we become one with Hashem totally, as if we transcended completely in a way any level of friction or division or separateness is gone. And we're deeply, deeply, profoundly one with Hashem. That's what Shabbos is. And this is also another analogy we spoke many times about the Royal Guard in Britain, the London Tower. They have to stand there, they can't make a smile, they can't make this. It's an amazing marshal to bring out. That's the idea. When you're standing in the presence of the king himself, there's no idea of malacha. Malacha means you're like the general in the field, the battlefield, you're doing war. When you're standing in front of the king himself, it's a level of dveikus and attachment where there's no possibility in general, and there's no possibility of spashtus. Now, this is also connected with other concepts that are connected to Shabbos. Like, for example, on Shabbos we say, Vayakhel, Hashemayim v'aretz. We have Shabbos busy, the Eibishter busy creating the world in 6 days of the world, 6 days of creation. That's Hashem, the way He lows Himself. But then when you say Vayakhel, Hashemayim v'aretz, Vayakhel is Miloshin Kaloyin. Chassidus says, Kaloyin means again, attachment, cleaving, yearning, pining, becoming one. Vayakhel, Miloshin Kaloyin. That's the higher level. And the same thing is when we say l'chodoidi likras kala. Same idea. Shabbos is connected to kala. Kala is also miloshin kaloyin. That we're completely one with Hashem to the extent that there's no other. We became one completely. And that's kalois hanefesh. So again, we have the avodah of the 6 days of the week. That's where you have the phone, which is working, which is busy. And then you have Shabbos, which is recharging the battery, but the one is connected to the source, which is higher than doing work outreach and expending energy. So therefore, Shabbos is the idea of the closeness to the King. And now, the idea of this as a separate mitzvahs loiseseh, not having punishment, and Bezdin shouldn't be doing a punishment, because it's a whole higher level. In a way, it's like we're not doing anything. What are we doing? We're connecting to Hashem. Bezdin has to connect. Every person who is being judged is being elevated that day. And in a certain sense, maybe you could say, even though the Baal Turim says, even though the Chinuch says that the next day is the judgment, but maybe you could say that the point is that every year has the Shabbos which is in him. Al derech lifnei havaya tetoru. When Shabbos comes, it permeates every single person, as explained in Chassidus, that on Shabbos ha'ma'oretz ein yochel l'shaker, he's innocent on Shabbos. Everyone is innocent, because we're all on a higher level. We come to our true essence, which every single yid is essentially a neshama shenesat to be tahori. There's a level of innocence and purity, and that is revealed on Shabbos by every single yid, because in the lashon of the chinuch, the Eibishter invites us all. He shows a kiruv to everyone. The truth of existence, the truth of reality, of Hashem Echad, is revealed totally to such a degree they don't have to work anymore to reveal it. It's revealed, and we're living and we're existing in that zone. And therefore it's not possible to give a punishment on Shabbos, because on Shabbos we're all existing in the zone, in the source. Kol hakol be'etzem k'maya etzem. We're all part of Hashem. Hu levad levein zolasei. All there is on Shabbos is Hashem. And the lesson from this for all of us, as the second Baal HaTurim that I mentioned, is we have to debunk the myth of Shabbos as a day of rest. We have to be busy, 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 focusing on spirituality, concentrating on dveikus, coming to a higher level of consciousness, etc. And we have to realize, we spoke about this many times, so I don't want to elaborate, how amazing Shabbos is. Shabbos is the antidote. Hashem preempted all the craziness of the world, including 2025, Tafshin Pei, and it's only getting worse, the craziness, by progressives or whatever you want. And what was the antidote to all of this? Shabbos. Get in touch with spirituality. Recharge your spirituality. And that's the connection to Parshas Parah. I don't want to elaborate. Everyone knows the famous question, Zeis Chukas HaTorah. Why is Parah Aduma considered the quintessential mitzvah of the whole Torah? There's many explanations. One explanation is because over here we see in a demonstrative manner that we take an animal which represents the animal soul, and we use it and we channel it in the right direction, and that's what it means that we use the ashes of the animal soul, 6 siddhis at length. But this is the connection to what we're speaking about today. What can channel everything in this world in the right direction if we have an awareness and a consciousness of a higher being, of a power which transcends all limitations? The more we will bask in the presence of this level of Hashem, Yom Shekule Shabbos HaMenucha, the more we will be in touch with our source, which transcends the world entirely, the more you'll be equipped to be able to deal with the world and channel everything in the right direction. Posting from my home, Be'ez Hashem Yisbarach, your man in Melbourne.